Ontario businesses react to COVID-19 reopening plan. AstraZeneca rollback hinders those allergic to mRNA COVID-19 vaccines. Ontario allows second doses of Oxford-AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine. Ontario greenlights AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine for second doses. Ontario will proceed with second doses of AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccines. Williams Canadian professor ordered to stand trial again over 1980 bombing in Paris. Ontario Health Minister lays out details of three-step reopening plan. Boat traffic down 27% on Trent 7 waterway. Canada invests nearly $200 million to help Ontario facility produce mRNA vaccines. Doctors call for vaccine injury compensation plan in Canada. Ontario government announces reopening of summer camps with little detail. Ontario to shorten COVID-19 vaccine dose interval starting with healthcare workers. A segment of Ontario's medical professionals feels neglected from pandemic pay. Small business owner can't get answer about Ontario COVID-19 grant, calls Global News and gets help. Will mixing vaccinations get us closer to one-shot summer? Dr. Weiss in Greyhound leaves Canadian market after almost a century, but he's had to turn them all down. He said, "We have 35,000 doses that hit the trash 2 kilometres away from where I'm sitting at the very moment," Dilkens told the House of Commons Health Committee on Monday. He said pharmacists in Windsor are just beside themselves thinking that this stuff is going into the landfill when there's such a demand here on our side of the border. Travellers who allegedly presented fake COVID-19 test results find how likely is a universal vaccine to combat all variants? Doctor answers your COVID-19 questions. Some provinces ramp up plans after Canada approves Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine for kids ages 12 and up. Can you choose a different vaccine for your second shot? Doctor answers your COVID-19 questions. What are you entitled to under Ontario's new paid sick leave program? Why weren't Ontario's long-term care homes ready for COVID-19's second wave? Toronto hospital transfers patients after high demand on its oxygen supply. Ford calls for mandatory quarantine for U.S. border travellers. Tighter air MEASURES COVID-19. Ontario patient transfers raise concerns. Critical care physician Dr. Alison Fury answers Ontario's call for healthcare help resource officers to stay in Winnipeg schools. No school resource officers at Edmonton Public Schools this year. Pharmacies wait for major supply boost as vaccines run out. Drive. Isaac Bogock answers your COVID-19 questions about vaccines and travel. 2 Toronto police officers charged in relation to gathering at Aylmer Church. Ontario Science Table calls for more vaccines to be reallocated to hardest-hit communities in Canada. Meanwhile, vaccines are still a piping hot commodity. Canadians are scrambling to find their first and second dose appointments as our rollout shows a steady upwards trajectory of daily doses. This combination of factors has led to waste in some U.S. cities, according to mayors and healthcare providers, and that waste is happening mere kilometres from Canadian cities rife with citizens that would gladly roll up their sleeves sooner. David Musige, president and CEO at Windsor Regional Hospital, told Global News that the U.S. doses are genuinely being thrown out. What happens is every single vial of Pfizer has approximately 6 doses. And then, once you pierce that vial, you have a limited amount of hours, 5 to 6 hours, to use up that vial. Musige explained, if you don't use all 6 doses up in that vial, then you have to throw it away. Top doctor says Alberta is monitoring reports of rare condition possibly linked to mRNA COVID-19 vaccines. London, Ont. Mayor calls deadly attack on Muslim family act of mass murder. You are safe, London, Ont. Police chief reassures Muslim community after deadly vehicle attack. London vehicle attack suspect arrested kilometres from scene. Police young people and vaccine consent. BC's top doctor says about a dozen children received Moderna instead of Pfizer. COVID-19 vaccine-COVID-19 pandemic has more new moms seeking mental health help. What to expect when you're expecting during the pandemic. Parenting tips for new moms. Postpartum depression and anxiety rates increasing during COVID-19. Air Canada says top executives returning COVID-19 bonuses after public disappointment. Canada's duty-free shops seeking pandemic help from Ottawa. Coronavirus, Canada-US border closure extended to February 21. Trudeau says end in sight for New Brunswick COVID-19 hotel quarantine instead of those vials going in the trash. Musige and Dilkens are hoping they can be brought just a few kilometres to Canadians waiting arms, and they aren't alone in their efforts. Niagara Falls Mayor Jim Diodati has also been vocal about the issue, telling Global News he too has been forced to reject perfectly good vaccines. Our American counterparts are asking us, we've got these extra vaccines. Are you interested in them before we throw them in the landfill? We'd rather put them into an arm than a landfill, said Diodati. He said instead, however, the Americans are throwing vaccines out every day because they expire, and we've got arms here that would be willing hosts for these vaccines. Diodati said, both Dilkens and Musige have suggested a number of proposals to get those extra doses into Canadian arms. One idea is to have pharmacists meet Canadians at the border in the tunnel that connects Windsor and Detroit. Canadians could essentially stick their arms out at the border crossing to get their jab. The owners of the Ambassador Bridge also sent a proposal to both the federal and provincial governments, according to Musige. They suggested that a vaccination center be set up at the base of the bridge on the US side, so Canadians could wait in their cars without ever having to drive up the street to meet the customs officers. So far, none of these efforts have been successful, according to Musige and Dilkens. In a letter sent to Dilkens and obtained by Global News, the Public Health Agency of Canada explained why the Windsor Mayor's proposal wouldn't work. With respect to the setup of the proposed clinic, please be aware that vaccine cannot be imported into Canadian space without the express consent of Health Canada. It is our understanding that actual vaccination, in other words, administration of the vaccine into a patient's arm, will occur on the US side of the border. They wrote, however, if the US nurse or pharmacist reaches across the border to administer it to a person in Canada, that is considered importation of product and requires an expression of no objection from Health Canada. PHAC added that by reaching their arm across the border and injecting the vaccine in Canada, the healthcare worker would be seen as importing the drug for sale in Canada. Calls for systemic change after no charges laid in Chantel Moore shooting death. New Brunswick Premier won't commit to inquiry into systemic racism COVID-19. Number of second dose British Columbians growing rapidly. Patient with brain injury walks away from RCH. Police seek suspect in random Chilliwack stabbings. Victoria Arena turned into homeless shelter. Which vaccine should you get for your second dose if you had AstraZeneca for your first dose? BC Ferries crew rescues man overboard. Pope calls for reconciliation. Healing over residential school. Discovery Ironman Canada eyes return to Penticton. Ceremonies held across BC to honour children found in unmarked burial sites. Police search 2 homes in connection with Trina Hunt murder investigation. Squire Barnes goes behind the scenes with Vancouver Police crash reconstruction squad. Suspects at large after man fatally shot in southeast Vancouver. BC paramedic says he has never seen it this bad in his 33-year career. Injured sacred white raven perking up since brought to BC Rescue Centre if the vaccine is not authorised for sale in Canada. The nurse could be found to be in contravention of the Food and Drug Regulations. They wrote, in a scenario where actual vaccination occurs in Canadian space, the importation of the vaccine should be reported in accordance with the Customs Act. As such, the Canada Border Services Agency will need to determine on whose behalf the goods are being imported to determine reporting requirements. Musige lamented that time was put into drafting this letter. Rather than trying to find a solution, spend your time and effort on making it happen, as compared to spending your time and effort on writing the rules back to us to indicate why it shouldn't be happening, Musige said. Dilkens added that the government is finding every way to say no to making this happen. I'm looking for someone who will find one way to say, yes, this is a sensible pathway. It's the Pfizer vaccine that's manufactured at the same plant in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Let's just find a way to make this happen, he said. The federal government, however, insists that there are more than enough vaccines coming to Canada already. We have a steady supply of vaccines coming into Canada, including 55 million doses coming in by the end of June. There are enough vaccines for every Canadian who wants to get vaccinated, said Aisling McKnight, a spokesperson for Health Minister Paddy Hajdi, in an emailed statement. On top of that, the federal government said this decision isn't up to them. We encourage Windsor to work with the province of Ontario should they have concerns with the current vaccination schedule for second doses, McKnight said. Push to address intergenerational trauma caused by Canada's residential schools. Experts fear AstraZeneca vaccine wastage in Canada, as calls to donate shots grow. Alberta identifies 296 new COVID-19 cases on THURSDAY COVID-19. Importance of younger age groups to get vaccinated. Heat warning remains in place for Calgary amid hot weather. Calls for more transparency over Alberta's contact tracing issues. Calgary Mayor calls on school boards to change names of Langevin. Bishop Grandin School's temperatures on the rise as Calgary restaurants reopen patios. Calgarians offer Indigenous prayers for healing after Kamloops mass grave found. Vigil held at Calgary City Hall for 215 children found in graves at former BC residential school. City of Calgary prepares additional COVID-19 business relief. Alberta Justice Minister disappointed by Lethbridge Police Action Plan. Alberta ramps up screening for COVID-19 variants amid rising concern over B1.617 CASES COVID-19 restrictions eased at Alberta's long-term care facilities. Calls mounting for investigation into possible residential school grave sites in Alberta. But as the federal government points fingers at the provinces are pointing the blame right back at the feds. The federal quarantine rules are the impediment to allowing this to happen, and that is a federal responsibility, said Alexandra Hilkeen, a spokesperson for Ontario Health Minister Christine Elliott, in an emailed statement. When pressed on whether the province is supportive of Dilken and Musige's ideas, Hilkeen said the province is supportive of getting Ontarians vaccinated as quickly as possible. Global News also reached out to the Governor of Michigan's office for comment on Thursday morning, but did not receive a response by the time of publication. Meanwhile, as Musige waits for the various levels of government to decide how, and whether, they want to address the issue, he said he continues to see unvaccinated patients landing in his ICU. He said there still aren't enough vaccines to keep up with demand. We don't have doses in the freezer. But what we do have is patients in our ICU that did not have an opportunity to get their first or second dose, and they're up in our ICU on ventilators. Musige said, I don't want more patients in our hospital or in our ICU that are there because they didn't get a chance to get a vaccine, either their first or second dose.